Hi, I'm Brent Askari, a writer.
And which ones had you written?
Oh, God.
Sorry, I should prep you all.
I'm totally blanking.
Last year you wrote the one on the bed.
Yes, the one on the bed. It was, yes, there was one. But this year, Altered is the one. But yes, I'll have to think about it. I will get back to
Wait, and we produced 2 of your shows, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
full-length
2
shows.
full lengths. Yeah, the full lengths. American Underground and Andy Warhol in Iran.
James came with the list. Smart.
I think people were asking me and I couldn't remember. So I kind of had a run for a while and then I took a few years off of COVID, it seemed, and then I had a couple lately. I did a play called The Wilderness. It was a Civil War play, a perspective, which was the Mona Lisa and other paintings in her gallery. Sweetheart Roland, which was a fairy tale. Broken, which was a political prison drama. I Don't Know, which was a drill sergeant and his cohort. Snow Falling Faintly last year, which was about a mother and son shoveling, and Safe Haven this year.
And Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica Provenz. I'm the Director of Development at Barrington. And this is my 4th 10 by 10. And the play tonight is called Forever's a Long Time. And last year, I'm going to try, I don't have a list. Last year, I wrote a play called The Open Door, which was 2 people on either side of a door. And during COVID, the video one, I wrote a play called On the Rocks, which was about grandma's dead in the next room and nobody wants to tell anybody. And then in 2019, I wrote a play called Stay Please about a woman with a lasagna and a gun coming to her neighbor's house. And I also wrote that 2 of those plays became the basis for Boca, which was done there.
Thank you for that. So James, where did the ideas come from for a full length?
You know, for me, it's kind of the same place. I very often start with a couple of characters in a situation, and I usually don't know why I'm interested in them, but there's something about it that sparks something in me. And I usually sit down with that and start letting them talk to me, start writing the dialogue. And you know, a lot of writers will tell you that you often feel when things are going well writing-wise, like you're listening more than you're thinking. You're just typing as fast as you can to take down what they say. And it takes me a while to figure out what a full-length play is about. But for me, it's very often a very similar process with a 10-minute play, except the full-length is taking so much longer. And it's much harder to get produced. But it starts with that.
My father would like you to speak louder.
I got him turned all the way up.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
My apologies. I got a little bit of a cold, or it's really allergies. But so that's the process. You know, I start with that a couple of characters in a situation, and if it's going anywhere, they just start making noise. They start talking to me, and I start paying attention to what they're saying, and I try to get it down, and you know. And it's back and forth, kind of writing it down like that, and then thinking about it, and you know, trying to figure out. Because there's always something there that is important to me, and I've got to figure out what that is and how to shape it into a drama or a comedy, that's my process in a nutshell.
So Jessica, we know where Boca came from, which was your 2 plays that we loved in 10 by 10. We said, hey, how about more of this? So how many people saw True Art this summer? So let's talk, which was Georgia Theater Festival that Jessica wrote. Where did True Art come from?
Okay, I think I walk through, I think I walk through the world always thinking, is that a play? Like every conversation, like, oh, that's a great line, that's a good scene, that's a good moment, that could be a 10-minute play. And so I think for the full-length plays, they have to have like a lot of twists and turns and substance. Like I have to feel like I could spend a long time with these people and this scenario and feel like there's a lot to mine here. Like if there's not a lot to mine, then you're gonna get, 70 pages in and be like, uh-oh, what do I do now? Right? Like you need to have some twist. True Art came from 2 sources of inspiration. I had read Malcolm Gladwell's, not The Tipping Point. The Tipping Point. Outliers, Tipping Point, one of them. And there was a bit about what make like how do people know art? What makes an expert an expert? And I was interested in that. And I was interested in the idea of like somebody who studies art and has immersed themselves and been a curator for decades versus somebody who is like pretty green but has like a direct response to a piece of art. Like I was interested in that conflict. And then I had read another book about, it was set in the 30s, it's true story about an art dealer who was a failed artist. And I loved that idea of like being surrounded by art and always and like always wanting to create the great thing. So anyway, that's where that came from. But really, like for me, a full-length play, it has to be something that it could take a long time, like a really long time. Like the first draft of True Art, my kid is 13 and he was not 13. Like he was like, you know. So you have to be there have to be enough places to go for me, to feel like it's worth exploring.
So what about Andy Warhol and Iran? Where did that come from?
I think that came from, I think, I've been writing a lot of plays about my father's from Iran and my mother is from New England. So a lot of plays having to do with the juxtaposition of sort of the Middle East and the West. And then I also knew I've always been fascinated by Warhol, and I in the back of my head I knew that Warhol had gone to Tehran in 1976 to take Polaroids of the Shah's wife, so that he could do her portrait. And I thought, it just always felt like something was there. But I didn't know what the conflict was, because I was like, well, he wants to take her picture, she wants her picture taken. I mean, that's interesting. And then had an idea of, but what if I made something up that he meant someone that I invented, and then that created the conflict.
So then, what about a 10-minute play for you?
10-minute plays, I mean, the full-length plays for me tend to come more from like a bigger idea, maybe, generally, or something I'm really interested in. The 10-minute plays for me, I mean, honestly, I get a lot of ideas from 10-minute plays by watching 10-minute plays. Like, I think I got the idea for this play from watching the last 10 by 10. And just sort of, I think like the 10 by 10 is so well curated and such good acting that it's very stimulating, and you go, ooh, what else might I like to see? And so a lot of times for 10-minute plays for me, a lot of times it'll just be like an image or a situation that then gets fleshed out, as opposed to a big overarching idea.
So James, how about for you? Like, where did the shoveling play came from last year?
It came from a very snowy winter, a few winters ago, I think. I totally agree with you. The 10 by 10s are very stimulating, and it's often I start to read them, or if I'm watching them, I watch them, and something happens and I think, oh, it's going here, and then it veers off somewhere else, which is great. But I have the idea for what if it went the other way, or what if it did this or that. Snow Falling Faintly was it's a play about death, and it's a play about going on in the face of death. And I wrote it during COVID times, and it just seemed like there was a lot of that in the air. And I love the atmospherics of it. There's something. It's my second play where snowfall is important. I have a full-length play where it snows for the entire play. And in my favorite productions of it, they have a snow machine that is like, it's falling outside, and you're inside in a pub, and it's falling, and it's just mesmerizing to watch it fall. That play, I have, where I write overlooks the park across the street, and when it snows, I find myself staring for like 10 minutes. So partly because I'm lazy, but partly because it's just so mesmerizing to watch. And so it came out of a place of that kind of evocative, atmospheric stuff, with the idea of two people talking about death but not saying it, not talking about it directly.
Jessica, where do your 10-minute plays come from without giving away anything this year?
Sure.
Because this year's a little something different.
I haven't
from you.
seen this year yet. Have you guys seen it yet?
No.
Okay. So actually last night I was reading the Times and there's an article and I sent it to Alan and I was like, next 10-minute play, question mark. It was about a couple on an airplane where the person between them had died. And they were then forced to ride the entire flight with this dead person between them. And I was like, okay, that's not a full-length play, but that is a 10-minute play. And last year, just for an example, I haven't written that play because that was last night. Last year, I went on a work trip for Barrington Stage, and I was sleeping in this tiny little room that was sort of like a pod. And I mean, it was like a bed and a door and a desk. And at about 6:30 in the morning, there was like a pounding on my door. And I was like, that is not for me. And then it kept going. And I actually just sort of shouted like, no, because I thought it was the wrong room. Anyway, I finally got up and I opened the door and there was a young, attractive woman who was completely naked standing there like this. And she told me she had gotten thrown out of her room and could I give her a towel? And I was like, that's a 10-minute play. So like, I guess, so they kind of, actually, Martin, who's right here, his father lived to 97, almost 98. And when he was 92, 93, Martin was like, my dad, he was living in Fort Myers, and he was like, he's like the catch of the county. Like, he can still drive at night, And so I was like, I was just thinking about it, and I was like, oh, these women, they circle these men, and they come with the brisket brigade, they come, and I thought, well, what if someone was really desperate, and she comes with a lasagna and a gun, and she's like, you will eat my dinner, and we will, and it wasn't even that you'll eat my dinner, it's that you will, like, talk to me, and we'll have, I thought that, anyway, so that's, the plays kind of come from everywhere, including at work.
So, for all three of you, have you found yourself, since you are kind of repeaters here, starting to write plays with some of the cast members in mind?
Absolutely. Like this year, the play that I did was definitely like, there's the actress Peggy, who I'd seen, and I just thought, I had this image of her doing something. I was like, oh, that, I would like to see that. And then sort of wrote a play very much with her in mind. This was kind of the first year that happened, but I think that's one of the things that's fun is knowing, that the actors come back. And even if they didn't, it's such a great stimulus to be like, particularly if you watch a whole evening of somebody perform, and be like, oh, what if they did that? I would like to see that. Maybe no one else would, but.
I will say, after I finished reading your play this year, don't want to give anything away.
Yeah.
I think I said to Maura from our team, I just said, he totally wrote that for Peggy, and I cannot wait to see Peggy do that. Because it's something I've never seen Peggy do before. And like literally the moment I read it, I was like, oh, Peggy. Also, I was like, Peggy's gonna love this. How about the two of you? If you ever kind of come here and see something and be like, oh, I want Robert to do this, or maybe I can trick Peggy into doing that.
I do it the exact opposite. I write my plays, but when I'm sending stuff to you, then I look at it and I think, like, how does that fit the ensemble? At least as it was last year, probably will be. Most people come back. A lot of people come back. I do it that way. But I'm thinking maybe I should do it the other way.
I would say no. I don't think, actually, I would say no, and who you end up casting is like surprising to me. Like the play tonight, I didn't know who you'd cast, and same last year could have been the younger couple.
Yeah.
Are the ages flexible?
Yeah. And then but it is really fun when you can write for somebody, or like this summer when I did True Art and knew Jane Atkinson was going to do the lead. Then you start to say like, oh, this would be a fun line for her or something. Or when Deborah Jo was in my play here, I definitely wrote a monologue for her because and actually a lot more. And I would call her and say, like, what do you think of this? Because you had somebody with that kind of capacity to work with.
So have any of your 10-minute plays actually meant to be long plays? You got 10 pages in and went, that's good. And like there's no more steam in the engine?
The reverse for me. The play last year, I turned into a full-length play. So the couple on either side of the door, they opened the door, blackout, and then I wrote a whole play. I think it's a better 10-minute play than a 2-hour play, but I tried.
I think that's often true, that things want to be what they want to be. But having said that, I probably have 3 or 4 full-length plays that originated as a 10-minute play. And it's often the first scene.
Yeah.
Developing one. Now, I don't know why that is. It could have been the last scene, but it's always the first scene. And it goes from there because, I don't know, the characters have more to say to me or more that they want to do.
It's only happened to me. It never happened that I had something I thought was a full-length play and then said, okay, that's it. But I did have a 10-minute play that I then expanded. And it ended up being a scene somewhere in the middle and expanded to a full-length play. But sort of like you were saying, in retrospect, it's never been produced. And I was like, maybe it was fine. It was a good little 10-minute. Maybe it didn't need to be longer. I don't know.
So there's a weird art to a 10-minute play that all 3 of you are so great at. Like, what is about 10 minutes in your opinion versus a 6-minute play or 14-minute play? Like, 10-minute plays are a thing. Barron Stage did not create the genre of the 10-minute play, but it's a thing. It's such a specific thing to write for. Like, why do you think it's 10 minutes? And sometimes they're 9, sometimes they're 11, let's be honest. We're not there with the stopwatch. Like, what do you think about it is that, like, why is it able to achieve just the right amount of something in 10 minutes?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think I have lots of thoughts about 10-minute plays. I really do. And I think some people who are amazing at writing full-length plays actually can't write 10-minute plays and vice versa. Like, I think it's its own thing. Why is it 10 instead of 6? I don't know exactly. But I have a structure that I like, which is you have a scenario. Tonight's play doesn't fully follow this, but you have a scenario halfway through. So everybody's kind of going along as planned. Halfway through, it kind of flips. And you play that out. And then at the end, I think you have to have what I call like a button. You have to have like a good final line or a zinger or something that's like, oops, I didn't see that coming. And I think it's different. Like, I think you approach it. I know where I'm going in a 10-minute play. In a full-length play, I like to know where I'm going because I think that actually, for me, makes it a lot clearer. But with a 10-minute play, I actually do need to. I need to know the arc before I start. And also, to your point, like, why not 4 minutes? I think Saturday Night Live kind of. It's like you watch it and you're like, oh my god, that was a long 4 minutes. Like, they couldn't even stay. So it's actually not easy to find a subject that's going to last for 10 pages. And I think about Saturday Night Live because some of the sketches work really well, and some are like, oh my god, I'm so bored, and it's only been 3 minutes. And so I think that's part of the challenge.
Yeah. One thing they tell you when you start writing 10-minute plays, or they told me, was like the trick is to get in late and get out early. You come in just before the climax, and then you get out right after it. And there's some truth to that, but it kind of disguises something else. If you came in late at Hamlet and left early, I mean, it would make no sense. You need that 2.5 hours before the bodies start to drop to understand why it means anything. A 10-minute play, you need enough matter that you care about it, but not so much that you can't get it in the 7 minutes you have or whatever before the bodies start to drop or whatever your climax is. And so a lot of it is, and we've kind of been talking around it, is you have to pick the right story that will fit in 10 minutes, and not all of them will. At the same time, they have these 1-minute play festivals. Has anybody been to a 1-minute play festival? I write them, but I kind of hate them because I feel like I'm always frustrated. I mean, the end of the first page comes so fast that you can't really say anything. And yet they have all these festivals, and there'll be a handful of ones that I think are good, worthwhile, and a lot of them just don't make sense to me. there's something about 10 minutes that gives you enough time to, create characters, admittedly with somewhat broad sketches that people will still relate to and care about. And it's really hard to do it any shorter than that. You can do it, long form television for 50 hours, all the way down to a full length play, all the way down to a one act to 10 minutes. But below 10 minutes, it gets really hard to, hit that.
I like that. I mean, I think this is sort of repeating what others have said, but I like the economy of it. I like the challenge of it. It feels like enough time. I said I have done a 1 minute play contest once. Yeah, and you're just kind of like, and it's done. But the 10-minute play, I think it's just a nice amount of time that you can get some sort of arc, potentially enough time to establish something, sort of, maybe raise the stakes a little, some sort of twist, and get out. And I like the economy of it, and I feel like I always, when I write these things, I always feel like, okay, I've pared it down to the bones, and then I see it, and I'm like, oh no, it could have been so much shorter. And even with this, which is always interesting, like, I got an email from Alan, who was like, hey, I have a couple ideas for cuts, and what do you and I was like, great, I trust you. And I looked at it, I was like, yeah, totally, if you feel like we don't need this, great. But it's such a great, I don't know, just sort of exercise in sort of dramaturgy and just what do I need, what do I not need? And as I said, I always feel like I always see it and I'm like, I could have even done less.
I have two quick thoughts if I can add on.
Yeah.
I like what you said, that it should be about something. I think that as silly as a play might be, there should be a moment where the audience is like, oh, I actually feel something. Otherwise, like, what are we doing here for me? And then the other thing is I will write a 10-minute play in 1 or 2 sittings. And then I might go back and clean it up, but I will, like, to me, it's like, it's a thought, as opposed to a full-length play, which could take a really long time.
Yeah.
So.
I will say that we actually do quite a bit of cutting here. Part of it is we have a very, very quick rehearsal process. They basically start rehearsal and set on Tuesday. The following Tuesday, they're in this theater, putting lights and sound to them. And you'll be amazed of how, in a 10-minute play, any extra fat feels like even more. And I know in yours, we just took a little section,
Totally.
like it was like 2 or 3 lines we took out, try to get there. But I absolutely agree. As someone who reads a lot of them, more on our team reads a lot more than I do. The number of times people think it's so easy. It's a 10-minute play. It's 10 pages. And how many people send us things that are just like a joke, like with like 9 more pages built around that joke? That would probably be very successful as a 1-minute play. But like we have a lot of things. We've had things we put up here that like in rehearsals we start going, oh, this kind of had one thing to say. It said it on page 2, and then there's 8 more pages. So we work frequently with the writers to try to kind of pare it down quite a bit, but there's frequently a lot of people who aren't looking to say something or touch the audience, but it's more like, would it be funny if? And you're like, yes, for 10 minutes is it still funny? But we've had a lot of those, and sometimes they get onto our stage and we do our best to disguise them a bit. But we end up doing a lot of cutting here, because we just started to realize like, oh, this works and this works, oh, we just get this a little bit tighter. And our writers have almost always been very gracious about that. Let's open up to some questions from the audience. Those of you who've been here before with me know my drill is that they're at work right now, I'm at work right now. We do not dig into personal things, and no ask questions, don't soapbox like I am doing right now. So any questions from the audience? Yes.
Is it easier to do a 1-act play than a 10-minute play?
Ooh, is it easier to do a 1-act play or a 10-minute play?
I find 1-acts really difficult. I don't write many 1-acts. I don't know why. My ideas tend to be 10 minutes long or full length. And the 1-act, I feel like if you write a 1-act, you might as well keep going, which probably shows how little I understand 1-act plays. But that's how I feel.
I would agree. I also think there's a practical consideration in a way, like that if I write a a 35-minute play that I think is great, it's really hard to find someone to do it. Like, it's like I feel like, I'd have to write a companion piece or turn it into a full-length play. So from a sheer, so that might stop me in a way if I go like, then I might go, not that I would be completely result-driven, but I would go, well, how am I gonna 35-minute play or 25-minute play? It's hard to find a home for it.
Other than the high school circuit.
Right.
High schools love act plays.
Right.
Everyone loves a short, concise play. I think any audience would want to come here and we would never do like a 20-minute play or 25-minute play as one of our selections of the season because it's like, where's the rest of it? Other questions from the audience? Yeah.
When you are in the process of writing, is it all cerebral that you're thinking, or are you also visualizing and placing the setting as well? Do you use all your senses, or is it not a visual process?
I like to entertain myself when I'm writing, and if it's supposed to be funny, I want to think it's funny, and if it's supposed to be sad, I want to be moved. And there are times, especially like in the play for this year, where I'm like, I don't know how they're gonna do that. And that's not my problem. And I kind of love that. I love being like, it's gonna snow the whole play, and they have to figure that out. Like there's something great about being like, there's a director who's going to figure the hard parts out, and I actually love doing that. I picture it. I don't know. I think we probably like sit there. For me, I'll sit there for a few days. I'll drive. I'll walk, and when I can walk, and I'll like almost write the play in my head, and then when it comes to sitting down, it just kind of comes out. But I will picture it, and then when they get to a moment where I'm like, they're gonna figure that part out. I don't know. Do you have those moments?
I totally share with you the idea that you can write a stage direction that you have no idea
Yes.
how to bring into life or what it's going to look like. But you know that a really good theater artist will do that, and you're wasting your time and theirs by trying to figure it out for them, because they're going to do what they're going to do, and they should. I guess I always have an idea of what my characters look like and roughly where they are in the world, but not. I think I'm less visual, to use your terms, in that sense. That's what's important to me, and the seeing it, I'm happy to leave to somebody else who's better at it than me.
I really relate to what you were saying earlier about in terms of being cerebral. I think when it's going well, it feels like you get your mind out of the way, and it's more like you feel like, I have this idea, but and then this person would say this person, but it's not like a conscious process. It's almost like the subconscious is taking over, I think, when it's going well. But I feel like then at the end, there's that thing of, I've got this. I think of it like pottery a lot, like in terms of like, I've created this misshapen lump of clay, and then the sort of mind comes in and is like, but now let's make it look good and make sure everything. To me, that's where more the cerebral part comes, is more at almost like the second stage of it.
I would say that all three of you have been very successful about having very simple settings until this year, Jessica. And there are things like you play about shoveling, and there's like, and there's hypothetically there would be inches and inches of snow on the ground, or not, or they just hold shovels and look cold.
I had a snowplow.
And you did have a snowplow.
And I had no idea how to do that, but I figured sound and light design, and they did. The lights went across, and so much better than actually having the plow come out, because your mind fills everything in.
And for those who haven't seen this year's yet, when you get to Jessica's, I know which moments you decided to just let the director figure out on their own. There's a very specific moment where it's just like, you wrote down what happens, and it was like, good luck, everyone. And I'm so happy you finally get to see it, Jess. It's really something. Other questions from the audience?
I guess I'm curious about the dialogue, which may be a little bit of what you were saying before. If you're one person in your head, writing dialogue for different personalities. And you have to make the character's dialogue unique to that character. So how do you do that in your head, kind
This is an annoying answer, but I don't know.
That's what I was gonna
You
say.
know, I mean, it was the honest answer. Like, I think it really, again, going back to like, I think that's when you know it's going well, is when, and not to make it precious or some sort of, you know, new agey type, but on some level it feels like, oh, you hear, in a way it feels like, oh, I hear people talking and it's like, and then this person can say this and then this and then, you know, and it feels, again, when it's going well, it does not, but I feel when it's going well, as I think you said, you know, it feels a little bit like dictation. It's not a very, at least for me, I don't know, but if it's going well, it doesn't feel like a very conscious process entirely. It can at times, but I think when it goes better, it feels more like you're hearing voices, which sounds crazy, but
But I think a lot of the characters are variations of you and like how you talk, and so they might have my speech patterns, and then sometimes I will go back and be like, look, I think in a great script you should be able to hide the character names and know who's talking. I don't know that I achieve that all the time or half the time. And this summer I was in the middle. I'd probably seen True Art, I don't know, 10 times, and I was in it, and I realized 2 different characters used the phrase "good bone structure" in 2 different points of the play, and I was like horrified that I had not caught that until because it's obviously a phrase I use, and so anyway, I think sometimes you don't quite achieve it.
To me, I think you take, you get voices from every voice you've ever heard. They're all in your head, and you can meld them together, and you can reassemble them in different ways. I feel like that's what I was doing. I don't really feel like the people, when I'm writing, that the people are people I know, but they have traits of people I know, and they're probably collections of people I know, who are all kind of tending in whatever direction the character's tending in, and it just kind of happens.
Also, Jessica, do you find, like, when you worked on Boca, we knew about Peggy and Robert and Deborah Jo, where you obviously were hearing Deborah Jo as you went along.
Okay, is Robert here yet?
I don't know.
Okay, so Julie, so if he's not here, Julie, we had Robert in the play, and we love Robert, and Julie's like, give him a monologue so that he doesn't interrupt the rest of the rehearsal. And I was like, oh, okay. So I wrote him a monologue.
And you write really well for Robert.
I love writing Robert. Well, this is the funny thing. My job here is fundraising, and all of my friends are 80. And dead. I mean, really, and it's true. Like, and so people are like, "How did you know the Jewish people who live in Boca who are over 80 and play golf?" And I was like, "You!" Like, it's really. So, my dad's half my plays have my dad in them. So every time there's a man saying something inappropriate, like there it is. Anyway, I think like you said, you meet people, and sometimes they have voices that you latch onto. And sometimes you're right, like I'll say, oh, Robert, how does Robert talk and what does he do? And actually, with Robert, it was more of a collaboration. He'll say, oh, that word or that, then we're both alive, so we can talk about it.
Time for a couple more questions, yes.
I haven't read too many of the scripts, 1 or 2 over the years. And I'm curious, when you read a full-length play, it's replete with stage sets and enter left and enter stage right and up here, and you can almost picture it as you're reading. In fact, it takes you twice as long to read because you have to read the settings and the staging and everything else with the dialogue. Does that same kind of added stuff go with a 10-minute play when you know that you're addressing it for a stage that's almost as barren as it is right now?
I'll say it can. There's actually one play this year that was written by Rachel and Annette. They wrote a Well-Intentioned White People that we did several years ago. And when you see it, you'll see why. There's quite a bit of stage directions up top, because they're trying to set up a very specific way this world functions. But there's also plays that have, like, full-length plays that have, like, no stage directions. But for these, it kind of depends. Every writer's just a little bit different. Like this year, I believe you give a description of the event, like where they are, and a very clear description of who the younger person is. But you know, sometimes we get them and have to have like 0 stage directions, and then that's the director's job, as you said. Like, go figure it out.
I think for me it's similar, like a 10-minute play versus a full-length play. I'll probably write the same amount of, maybe not as much about the character, but I'll set up the world in the same number of sentences.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty much the same. Yeah.
Also, one thing that you learn as a writer is like not to direct when you don't have to. Like, I don't care if they enter from stage left or stage right. Like, I don't care if they're, you know, so I only tell people in the script when it has to be. You know, like if it doesn't have to be, then they can figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. You write for, you don't know the spaces that your plays are going to get performed in, and so if you're overly prescriptive about, you know, where somebody has to come in from or the like, I'd much rather have the director figure that out in the space, because you just can't anticipate that. And one thing, you know, playwrights always think about is like, what am I doing to make my play unproducible? You better stop doing that right now.
Time for one more question over here.
I'm interested in from the directing side, the arc of the 10 plays, you know, and how that is created. I thought I was there the second night, and I thought it just was wonderful, just as a whole production. The whole thing really worked the way it flowed. But they told us before that they changed things around from the first time or something. So I'm just interested, what is it because of what the actors changing, or the type of humor, or what is it that makes you order the plays in a certain way?
So sometimes I think the actors would love if we took their costume changes into consideration. The order we start with on first day of rehearsal is never what we have in first preview, and this is my 9th go around with these. I think this was the year to change the most between previews. We try not to change too much because it means everything has to change. But for one point, Jessica's play was second to last, and it became very clear, for good reason, it needs to be last, and let people walk out thinking about what just happened. It changes constantly because it is a little bit of a flow. You have 2 of them, they're serious next to each other. It kind of feels like a dip. A lot of it is just like, we learned so much from the first preview, and we've almost always changed around. This time around, I think we changed like 3 of them around. We did quite a big reshuffle, and on that second preview, we're like, oh, there it is. But it is like, our team can sit down and write down the perfect order for all 10, and then even at first rehearsal, they'll do the read-through, and right away it's like, okay, so no, that one has to be second now. This was a good way to end Act 1. This one will open Act 2. It's a weird little art we've learned. And when Alan did his first one, I kept on telling him, like, it's gonna change. And now Alan is just as attuned as Julie was, and being like, well, no, this one needs to go second, and then we'll go for, and me, Mo and Peggy, it's like really, and we have to really keep it almost very, like capsules, be able to move them around as much as possible. This is by far the biggest shift we've ever done. Bless our tech team, our production team, and our cast, and everyone backstage, because that was a shuffle, but it's so paid off.
And what about, if I can add on to her question, when you select the plays, like, how much are you thinking about, okay, Robert needs a good part, and we have too many comedies, or we don't have enough comedies, like, how much is that coming in?
Oh, there's a spreadsheet.
Really?
There's literally a spreadsheet with each role, each actor, and we were very, very conscious of being like, well, Peggy and Robert can't be an 8 out of 10 of them.
Right.
We need a little bit for everyone, but we're also very conscious of being like, oh, Peggy's not done that before. Oh, this year there's no like Peggy and Robert. There's no the old couple one that's dying scene for the first time I think ever. No one's dying this year. I have to think about that again. There's a lot of that consideration. Like, is there enough to get a great actor to come be the younger couple? Is there enough of this? Is every single scene need 8,000 props and period costumes? Like, there's a lot of that, but there's literally a spreadsheet. And we start moving people around, and we go, well, what if the middle couple play the 2 leads in yours? Oh, well, now that shuffles. And we try to balance it out, because there's one year, I think Peggy was in like 7 of them. And I emailed Peggy the scripts, and she's like, am I in 7 of these? And I was like, yep. And she's like, oh, okay, I'll start learning my lines. But it's like, this year's I think all of them are exactly 5 or 6 this year. Like it's very balanced, feels very good this year, but it's a whole process. Taking the art out of it, there's a spreadsheet. Arts always looks best with a spreadsheet. One last question.
It's not a question, but for you three to be sitting on this stage, you had to write better than 200 other people just to get to this point.
Or you have to work at
it's
the theater.
amazing because that has to go into your mindset as to do something that's creative, better than the next guy. And I'm very impressed.
Aw.
Yeah.
I think the arts is.
And I think she gets an extra 15 seconds. It's 10 minutes and 15
That's
seconds.
right. That's right. I think when you're in the arts, it's all about longevity, and the longer you can stick with it and keep writing or keep acting or whatever, the chances of you like having some breakthroughs
Yeah.
is the more likely, because it's a long road.
Yeah, I mean,
So final question from me, anything in the past like week or so that you've been like, maybe next year? We already heard from you.
We did.
Taking from, has it even happened lately, or like you're driving over here where you're like, do you know what, maybe this year? Or are you looking for tonight as this year's inspiration for next year?
I think I'm looking at tonight. I mean, yeah, I'm looking to get inspired by tonight, I think. But no, nothing recently that we've gone, that should be a 10-minute play.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything either. I've been working on a play this week which is about the Arminianism dispute in Puritan New England in the 18th century, which I think has a lot of laughs. But I'm not sure you'll see it next year.
Just what I heard from you. So just a reminder for those who's seen it tonight,
I've seen it already.
or seen it already. So excellent. Remind them your piece is Altered, which I believe is the first up. Nope, we moved it. It's in there. Yours is Safe Haven,
Right.
which is a mother and their child on a bench.
No,
Nope.
it's the firehouse one.
Oh my. I promise I work here and I watch the
Opens
show.
Act
A lot of
Two.
plays.
yes.
Yes.
Give me a
Yours
break.
opens up Act 2. Looking to Maura, yep. Yours opens up. And yours closes out the show with something very different. So, but thank you for always sending in great plays and these great artists.